The baby's cry pierced through the quiet hum of the airplane cabin like glass shattering in the dark. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, sighing and rolling their eyes. A flight attendant hurried down the aisle trying to help, but the child's wails only grew louder, echoing through the narrow space. In seat 88C, a young woman named Lena Hayes turned her head toward the sound. She could see a little boy no older than 2, his face flushed red from crying. And beside him sat a man, tall, handsome but visibly exhausted, trying desperately to soothe his child. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his eyes hollow, and the weight of some unseen grief seemed to press down on him. If this story already has your heart stirring, if you believe in kindness, empathy, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your small act of support helps stories like this reach more hearts around the world. The man bounced his son gently on his knee, whispering something, but it wasn't working. The little boy clutched a tiny stuffed bear and wailed even louder, drawing glares from frustrated travelers. Lena could tell the man was embarrassed, his jaw tightened as if trying not to break down himself. Something inside her stirred. Maybe it was the motherly instinct she didn't even know she had, or maybe it was the haunting loneliness that mirrored her own heart. Either way, she unbuckled her seatbelt, stood, and slowly walked toward the man. She knelt beside the crying child and smiled softly, her eyes gentle but confident. The man looked up startled, but before he could say a word, she began to hum, a soft, lilting tune her mother used to sing to her when storms rattled the windows at night. The melody floated through the cabin like a whisper of calm. Within moments, the boy's cries began to fade, his breathing slowing as his tiny head leaned against her shoulder. The passengers who had been annoyed moments before now watched in silence, some even smiling. The man blinked in disbelief. I don't know how you did that, he murmured quietly, as though afraid to disturb the magic. Lena just smiled and said softly, "Sometimes, a lullaby works better than words." The little boy, whose name she later learned was Noah, clung to her finger as he drifted off to sleep. Lena returned to her seat, and the father, now calmer, offered her a quiet nod of gratitude. But she had no idea who he was, and no clue how that single act of kindness was about to change both of their lives forever. As the flight continued, Lena stared out the window at the endless stretch of clouds. She was returning home after 2 years of chasing dreams that never worked out. A failed engagement, a lost job, and the crushing burden of student debt. Life had humbled her. She used to be full of optimism and color, now she was simply tired. The only reason she could afford this flight was because her aunt had paid for it after hearing she couldn't even afford the bus home. She wasn't someone who believed in luck anymore. She believed in survival, in putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how heavy it felt. Across the aisle, the man, Ethan Cole, watched her. His gaze wasn't romantic, it was filled with something deeper, recognition, gratitude, maybe even guilt, because Ethan hadn't always been this broken. Just a year ago, he had been named one of Forbes' youngest billionaires, founder of a medical technology company that revolutionized heart surgery tools. He had a perfect life, a beautiful wife named Grace, their baby boy Noah, and a world that seemed to bend for him. Until one night on a rain-slick highway, Grace's car was hit by a truck. She died instantly. Since then, Ethan's fortune had meant nothing. Money couldn't calm a baby who cried for his mother. It couldn't fill the silence in their home. He had been trying to take care of Noah alone, learning bottle schedules and lullabies from YouTube videos, but every time he saw his son's eyes, the same deep brown as Grace's, he broke a little more inside. When the plane landed, Lena gathered her small bag and prepared to disembark. She didn't expect anything more from the encounter. But as she stood, Ethan approached her. He thanked her again for soothing Noah and insisted on carrying her luggage. She refused at first, embarrassed, but he was persistent, and something about his calm, respectful manner made her accept. Outside the terminal, she was about to leave when Ethan stopped her. "You're really good with children," he said quietly. "Are you a teacher?" Lena laughed softly. "Used to be. I worked at a daycare before I moved for a marketing job that didn't last." He nodded slowly, almost to himself. Then, to her surprise, he asked, "Would you consider working for me? As a nanny, I mean." For no, Lena froze. She didn't even know this man, and the offer sounded unreal. I don't think I'm qualified." "You are," Ethan said firmly. You're the first person who's made him stop crying in weeks." There was something about the sincerity in his voice, the quiet desperation behind it, that made her pause. Maybe this was fate giving her a second chance, a way to start over, even if it wasn't the life she planned. The next few weeks felt like stepping into another world. Ethan's home was unlike anything Lena had seen. A vast glass estate overlooking the ocean, filled with art, sunlight, and emptiness. The air smelled faintly of sea salt and memories. Noah quickly grew attached to her. He would giggle when she sang, reach out his little hands when she entered the room, and fall asleep on her shoulder every night. But Ethan remained distant. He buried himself in work, avoiding conversation and emotion. Lena noticed how he'd sit in Grace's old study late at night, staring at the photos of his wife. Sometimes, she'd hear the faint sound of a piano, a melody interrupted halfway through, as though he couldn't bear to finish it. Slowly, Lena began to change things. She filled the kitchen with laughter, brought out old toys for Noah, and even convinced Ethan to join them for dinner. It was awkward at first. He didn't remember how to smile. But then, one evening, as Noah smeared mashed potatoes across his face, Ethan laughed. A deep, genuine sound that startled even him. Lena caught his eyes, and for a brief moment she saw the man he once was, the man Grace had loved. Days turned into months, and the house no longer felt haunted. Lena brought warmth, music, and life back into their world. But deep down she knew her place. She was just the nanny, a helper, nothing more. She told herself that every night, even as she found herself looking forward to seeing Ethan's rare smiles. One day, while cleaning Noah's room, she found an old photo album tucked beneath his crib. Inside were pictures of Ethan and Grace, their wedding, the day Noah was born, vacations, laughter. But at the end of the album, one photo stood out: Grace sitting at a piano, a note scribbled beneath it, "For whoever teaches him to love music like his father does." That night, Lena sat at the piano, hesitating, then began to play a lullaby, the same one she'd sung on the plane. Ethan walked in quietly, freezing in the doorway. It was the song Grace used to hum to Noah. He stood there silently, tears glimmering in his eyes. When the final note faded, he whispered, "You brought her back." From that night on, something shifted between them. It wasn't spoken, but it was felt. In the way Ethan began joining Lena and Noah for their evening walks, the way he'd watch her with quiet admiration, the way Noah would grab both their hands at once. The grief that had once bound him began to loosen, replaced by something gentle and new. But one morning Lena received a letter. It was from a company offering her the marketing job she'd once dreamed of, the one she'd applied for months ago. It was in another city, far away. It was her chance to rebuild her own life. She stood by the window that night, watching the ocean waves crash against the rocks, torn between two worlds, her dream and her heart. Ethan found her standing there. "You're leaving," he said softly. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "You deserve your own life, Lena," he whispered, though his voice trembled. "You've given us back ours." The next morning, as her taxi pulled away, Noah pressed his small hand against the window, crying softly, the same way he had on that plane. But this time, Ethan didn't look lost. He held his son close and whispered, "She'll come back.